If your friends were all jumping off a cliff, would you? Would you get wrapped up in the excitement of the moment and do what you wouldn't usually do? In Charlotte Bronte's novel, Jane Eyre, Jane is faced with great temptation, but she stands strong. Her speech is a practical example of how to stay reasonable when you feel insane. You should not let your emotions or the pressures of others distort your judgment when making a decision. So it is imperative that you define your values and morals before you are put to the test. Jane Eyre's monologue takes place right after Mr. Rochester, Jane's employer, suggests that Jane become his mistress. He is married, but his wife, who lives upstairs, is mentally ill. Rochester cares for Jane, and she loves him as well, but she is torn between her emotions and her convictions. Rochester makes his appeal to Jane. He says, "Is it better to drive a fellow creature to despair than to transgress a mere human law, no man being injured by the breach? For you have neither relatives nor acquaintances whom you need to fear to offend by living with me." Jane makes her response and says, "This was true. While he spoke, my very conscience and reason turned traitors against me, and charged me with crime in resisting him. They spoke almost as loud as feeling. They clamored wildly. 'Oh, comply,' it said. 'Think of his misery. Think of his danger. Look at his state when left alone. Remember his headstrong nature. Consider the recklessness following on despair. Soothe him, save him, love him. Tell him you love him and that you will be his. Who in the world cares for you? Who will be injured by what you do?' Still, indomitable was the reply, 'I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. I will keep the law given by God, sanctioned by man. I will hold to the principles received to me when I was sane and not mad as I am now. Laws and principles are not for times when there is no temptation. They are for such a moment as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor. Stringent are they, and volatile they shall be. If at my individual convenience I break them, what would be their worth? They have a worth, so I have always believed, and if I cannot believe it now, it is because I am insane, quite insane. My veins running fire, my heart beating faster than I can count its throbs. Perceived opinions, foregone determinations, all I have at this hour to stand by. I plant my foot." Written over 150 years ago, Jane's convictions are still applicable today. Many temptations come our way in all areas of our lives, whether that is cheating in school, stealing from work, or lying to protect your own self-image. In Jane's case, it was committing adultery. If we are to wait till when we are in the moment to make our decision, we are more likely to do what is easy or satisfies our desire. But this is rarely right, or what we would have done if we would have thought about it ahead of time. I am a Christian, and my standard is like Jane Eyre's and is the law of God or the Bible. Often this goes against the world's culture, and so it seems like normal to make a compromise, but I know what I believe is true. It is not just peer pressure, but my own desires that tempt me. So this passage from Jane Eyre encourages me to stand firm in my resolve. As Jane said, laws and principles are not for the time when there is no temptation. They are for such a time as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor. Stringent are they, and volatile they shall be. If at my individual convenience I might break them, what would be their worth? The answer is that they would have no worth. It wouldn't matter what you decided if you were to just change your mind on the whim. There are always temptations that can be justified. You can't rely on your feelings to guide you when you are making hard decisions. Emotions and pressures can distort a person's judgment, so it is imperative for a person to determine their values and morals before they are put to the test. Have you thought about your convictions so that in the moment you can plant your foot and do what you think is right?